Later on this morning, New Brunswick's Natural Resources Minister Paul Robichaud is going to reveal his government's proposals for new protected natural areas. Now, this announcement has been a long time coming. Mr. Robichaud's predecessor in the job, Bruce Northrup, promised to set aside 8% of Crown land. Now, at this point, New Brunswick protects 3.1% of the province's land base. Only Prince Edward Island protects less. The national average is 10%. Now, this morning's announcement is going to be watched with interest, especially among those concerned about the forest strategy, which increases the harvest in mature forests and conservation areas. Roberta Clowater is the executive director of the New Brunswick chapter of the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, and she is with me in the studio this morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming in.
Morning, Terry.
Okay, how long have we been waiting for this announcement, these new proposals on protected natural areas?
Well, in this instance, we've been waiting at least 6 years. It was under the previous government that the commitment was first made to expand the protected area system, and the current government maintained the small commitment that was made by the previous government. So we've been waiting about 6 years across two governments.
Okay, how was this new policy determined? Who had input into the formulation of what we're about to find out about?
Really, it was a target that was set by government with very little input from stakeholders. They just pulled a number out of the air and decided that they would protect 8% of the Crown Forest, which would mean that we would probably be protecting just over 4% of New Brunswick's land base. So we'll be increasing by about 1 and a bit percent across the province.
When we talk about protecting Crown Forest, are we talking about protecting Crown Forest that has some unique attributes, or is it just a general protection?
It's both. There are some of these candidate protected areas that are small, very sensitive, ecologically important habitats for species at risk or rare plants or other things. Most of the areas that were identified were old forest habitats, some of the larger blocks of old forest that we have left in the province. And so a lot of them are that, but some of them were also areas along salmon rivers.
Okay, now many people are probably going to be wondering what the connection is between this protected areas strategy and the new forest management strategy, which increased cutting in mature forests. What is the connection there?
Well, the connection is basically that no matter how much, even if they met their commitment today, which I wonder if they will, because there was so much pushback from the mining and the forestry sectors, that the connection is with the new forest strategy that they're actually going to be increasing harvesting. So they're slashing what they call the conservation forests, so these areas that were specially managed to conserve old forests and rivers. They're slashing that by an amount that is actually way more than the amount that they might even protect if they make the announcement today, best case scenario. Okay. So it's a net loss no matter which way you cut it, is that we are looking at a slashing of the conservation forest by a quarter, and the amount of hectareage that's involved is actually way more than they're proposing that they might be protecting today. We don't know how much it'll be. Are
there some likely candidates, forest sections for protection? Are there obvious sections of the forest that would be protected?
One of the key areas that we've identified as being missing from the protected area system is in the Restigouche River watershed in northwestern New Brunswick. It's the crown jewels of our wilderness here in the province, and it supports a salmon angling economy that's worth $20 million to the regional economy and supports hundreds and hundreds of jobs up in that part of the province.
That's through tourism?
The salmon angling, and then ecotourism is on top of that. So there's a big wilderness canoe destination associated with the Restigouche as well. So that's an area that we focused a lot of attention on. We managed to get over 12,000 supporters from New Brunswick and across Canada to show that there was interest in having the wildest parts of the Restigouche protected, and we're really concerned that they're actually not going to come through with as much as we had hoped they would in that area. And if they can't do it there, where can they do it? I mean, it's such an obvious area that needs to be conserved and protected for those strong non-timber parts of the economy up there.
You know this issue really well. What are the challenges facing Mr. Robichaud in the formulation of this policy?
Well, I would say the main challenge is that it's the forest management policy that's currently going forward seems to fly in the face of what the public actually wants. So it seems to be going against all the public values that have been expressed over and over again about what needs to happen with our crown forests. And this should be a big concern. I would expect that that there isn't the public support there for this. And when there's not public support for something, it means it's not going to be stable moving into the future. So this is not a forest policy that can be considered to be stable. How can anybody make investments on something that isn't a stable policy base when there's going to be so much concern expressed about it, and there are going to be so many people calling for it to be reversed? And I think it's a concern. And I think that the New Brunswickers really need to show their concern. They need to speak up about this because now's the time. We're at the limits. we're actually probably going below the limits of what the forest can actually handle and still be a resilient forest.
Some people might wonder about the practicality of having the minister who has championed the new forest management strategy being the same minister who's making the decisions about what areas are set aside as protected natural areas. Do you see an issue there?
Well, it's always been an issue with the protected areas being housed in the same department as are making decisions about forestry and what happens, how much cutting happens, but also it used to be that it was in that department was also mining. So there were always those conflicts at the ministerial level, and maybe it is one of the things that contributes to keeping us back. I don't know.
What number that the government could announce today would you be happy with?
Well, I mean, the best case scenario based upon the commitment would be if they met their commitment, which would be 8% of the Crown Forest, which would mean we would move from 3% of the province being protected to something just above 4% of the province being protected. That's just a drop in the bucket compared to what is needed to actually bring us up to the level that most of the other provinces across Canada are meeting. So if the average across Canada is 10%, we're way below that. So to say that I would be happy with that is, or that anybody who cares about nature and wilderness in New Brunswick should be happy with that is probably an overstatement. But I would say that the best case scenario, if I were thinking optimistically, would be if they actually met the commitment that they made.
What are the direct consequences of New Brunswick being so far below the national average?
Well, I think it's, I believe, and CPAWS believes that it's holding us back from diversifying our economy with respect to how we use the forest as a part of the economy. So ecotourism and salmon angling, they're big parts of the economy now. Well, salmon angling is a big part of the economy. Ecotourism could be a much larger part of the economy in northern New Brunswick and all around the province if we just actually had protected enough of the destination spots that people could build their businesses around bringing tourists to, and that they knew that those areas would be there again year after year. That's what they need in order to build a strong ecotourism economy. They understand this in Nova Scotia, and that's why the Nova Scotia government is way ahead of us. They have protected already 9% of their province. They're moving to 12%. And, tourism is a big part of their economy, and they understand the contribution that it makes and what they need to do to make sure that that tourism base is still there into the future.
In the community of conservation-minded individuals, what is the mood as you wait for the announcement?
I think people are feeling discouraged because normally CPAWS would want to be out there saying, giving credit where credit is due and saying, government, you just established some new protected areas, good on you, that's what we want. But in the face of the fact that it's actually a net loss for conservation with the current forest strategy, and we're going to be losing way more old forests than we're protecting, it's really discouraging to not be able to be positive about an announcement that should be moving us forward. But in fact, it feels like we're one step forward, two steps backwards in this instance.